Welcome back, everyone. In our previous episode, we took a deep dive into the abyss of fortune, revealing just how truly bizarre and horrifying the site can be. But what if I told you there's another layer that is even more shocking, one so insane that you have to see it to believe it? In this video, we're going to venture even deeper as we explore some of the most unsettling behaviors that lurk within this platform. So, join me as we navigate the event horizon and unravel the maze of secrets, horrors, and chaos that make Fortune one of the most infamous platforms on the internet. This is the real, unfiltered side of one of the web's most controversial spaces. Welcome to part 2 of the darkest side of Fortune. Zane was always been a thrill seeker, not the kind who battled his way over the mountains or through the abyssal depths of the ocean, but the one who submerged himself in the darkest pits of the internet. It was not curiosity, but the digital high that we all were after. It was this that led him to 4chan's board, a chaotic corner of the internet where rules did not exist, and the only limits were the ones you set for yourself. Zane was every internet junkie ever, filled with memes, deep web conspiracy theories, and complete bullshit that is most likely not even true. However, on one fateful evening, while scrolling through the other whirlwind posts, he found something else. A thread stood out to him. It was posted with no clickbaity title, hashtags, or emojis, just a simple line of text. Want to see the truth behind the masks? Come here. Zane was intrigued enough to click on the link, not really knowing what he was getting into. It brought to a secret board where he had not been before. It was bare bones, minimal, just a handful of threads, each sporting peculiar monikers, strange icons in the post names. Zane paused, a shiver running through him, and the one I noticed most was, "You have been selected." Along with it, almost cryptically simple, was a message. "Zane, we have been keeping an eye on you for some time now. It's time to play." Zane assumed it was just another bot and some malfunction in the system, and yet something about the post unsettled him. How did it know his name? He looked at the timestamp of the thread, posted just moments before he had logged in. No, it couldn't be real. Someone was messing with him. Challenge, though, was always Zane's middle name. He heard a voice in his head that told him to ignore the feeling that crawled all of his spine with dread, and so act. He tried to seem nonchalant when he answered, "Play what?" A few moments passed. Then his screen flashed and a post popped up. "Just for him. You'll see soon enough. But first a task. The game is over if you don't answer truthfully." Zane's pulse quickened. A task? The clock was ticking, and this was becoming more weird by the second. He looked around in his black room, on alert for someone to jump out from behind his desk or his closet. But he was alone. He replied with a typo, as if it had all just been a big prank. "All right, I'm listening. What's the task?" Almost right after that, a new message appeared. "What are 3 things you are most scared of?" Zane went still, with eyes locked on the screen. It is the question that bugged him, least of all, who hasn't been asked, that in one form or another. But more than that, the thing knew who he was, knew his thoughts, knew his secrets. Zane had always liked to think that he was better at separating his online life from his real life. His life was fragmented into boxes: his job, his family, his friends. But now, that line between the virtual and the physical was breaking down. He had to respond. If he went to play, the rules of the game were obvious. So he typed, losing control, being exposed, dying alone. There was a shiver down his spine the moment he hit send. Something cold passed over him, like the feeling of being watched, something very real. Moments later, the response came. Good. So we are going to let you experience all three of them. Zane's heart began to race. What the fuck had he gotten into? This was no longer a game. It was a song being played in hell. It was a nightmare, with a broken promise of something so wrong, it was pure evil. He tried to wind down, to exit the thread, but the screen would not permit the exit. It was as if the website had completely taken control of his computer and locked the mouse cursor in place. A new message appeared. Your task isn't over yet. Navigate to the location it has marked us as. Time is running out. Zane could not believe his eyes. A map had popped up in the browser. It was a street he recognized, one about a mile from his apartment. It was not a strange place. In reality, it was something he came past multiple times. But tonight, that street was different. Like a warning, dark corners of the map pulsed with an eerie glow. Number, this couldn't be real. But he began to feel the burden as he pondered it more and more. He thought that neither the paranormal activity nor any of the superstitions others spoke of were true. But this made it feel so wrong in every way. He could feel eyes on him, felt someone or something following his every move. He checked the clock. The task had provided him a time limit. He has next half an hour to reach the place marked on the map. He sat there, frozen, wondering what to do, as the text on screen changed once more. You don't have much time. Don't waste it. Zane's blood ran cold. He had to act. What choice did he have? This was one sick joke, if it were to be a joke. But he could always call the cops and report it. But then again, would they even believe him? But Zane had also always been someone who loathed losing, who loathed being played. Yes, and this was some of the finest manipulation I have seen. Whoever this was not going to get the best of him. He got up from the chair, took on his jacket to go out of the apartment. Zane trudged along the darkened streets, his heart thumping. It was as if the air had thickened around him. Every time a car went by, she wondered if it was someone who knew him, someone who was in on this game. He did his best to shake the paranoia, but the closer he got to the dot on the screen, the more real it became. At last, he found the street, the one he had passed 100 times before. Tonight, however, was different. Streetlights glimmered. Shadows stretched long across the pavement. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. Standing on the corner of the street in the shadows, a figure loomed large. The breath caught in Zane's throat. Was this where the one who had been controlling him? The one behind the screen? The figure didn't move, as though it had been waiting for him. Zane took a step forward, and then another. His feet felt weighed down, as if the earth under him was telling him to stay put. But he couldn't. Not now. Not after what all had happened. He moved in closer, and now the man took a step out, but remained shadowed. The voice he now heard over the screen, that same low, distorted whisper, emanating from the figure. Welcome to the game, Zane. You're not getting out. Not now. Not ever. Zane's stomach turned. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't move. His body did not move, as though the words of the figure had frozen him in place. The figure advanced closer towards him. The surrounding air felt so much cooler in seconds. Zane immediately retreated, but his legs had other ideas, and he fell into the street. A horn blasted from below and brought him back to the present, and as he lifted his eyes, headlights bore down. It all just took a moment. Tires squealing, the car veered across the street, but didn't stop. And at that same instant, he awoke to the fact this was no fucking game. A split second before impact, it was, after all, a well-laid trap, one that would snuff out his life, just as the ones preceding it. Alex had always been the inquisitive type, the kind of person who lives for finding new places on the internet. For hours, he had droned on different forums, marveling at the wide, endless ocean of opinions, memes, and bizarre communities trapped in their rope worlds. But nothing could brace him for the untamed, primal liberty he would stumble into on 4chan. It started one night when Alex was feeling somewhat alone and looking for a little excitement, and came across a thread that stroked his interest. Welcome to 4chan. Bold claim. Last real bastion of free speech post. There was just nothing like it. All anonymity, no usernames, no reputations to uphold. Just everyone saying whatever he or she wanted without fear of being fired, stripped of their livelihoods. The man clicked the link, not realizing his life was about to change forever. Alex jumped update the boards and found himself immediately captivated by the inherent randomness. At first it was random video games and a few niche boards. However, it was the notorious board of that sparked his interest. The looser, upper louder side of 4chan. Simply put, slash B was basically 4chan put through an evil witch no moderation juicer, ending up with chaotic and inflammatory sins of every kind on display. A thread would degenerate with each new post into an inane meme war filled with dark humor and absurd conversations. It was unlike anything he had previously witnessed. The disorder liberated Alex in a peculiar way. He can say what he wanted without anyone judging him or thinking of him differently. Well, if you read the sign that hung above the board, then it was fairly simple rules. No rules. He felt empowered by the all-encompassing sense of freedom. However, soon, the curiosity became sinister. One night while browsing slash B, Alex noticed a post. That was an easy one. Are you bold enough to peer behind the masks? Click here. That cryptic message, he had looked attractive to him. What could it mean? Alex clicked the link without a second thought. What he discovered was a thread on slash POL, an image board infamous for its conspiracy theories and extremist content. The posts on those places took on a darker, more disturbing edge. For some, it was glorified hate. For others, it was revelry in violence, a location where the line between pixels and reality started to dissolve. One of the usernames for these posts was Shadow Walker. For a moment, Shadow Walker sounded like just another troll, crying out with unfunny hate and hyperbolic views. But as Alex went further down the threads, he noticed something far more disturbing about this user. The posts of Shadow Walker went beyond simply ranting. They were orderly and methodical and mostly related to real-life happenings. They listed highly personal and threatening details about people, sometimes even naming people, completely unaware they were even being targeted. Before long, Lawrence knew so much about what Shadow Walker did, the things that drew Alex to her, the thrill of the unknown, the peril associated with everything she became involved in. Shadow Walker appears to have taken both pleasure and pride in seemingly being able to expose the darkest secrets of virtually anyone, making continual references to darker, unrevealed sections of the internet, what has been termed more colloquially the deep web. The posts were vague, but one thing was clear: Shadow Walker had access to a realm that ordinary folk would never approach as soon as it gets dark. The more Alex read, the more he became obsessed. And one night, Shadow Walker dropped a link to a secret forum. Message for the brave: 14566533518. With both fear and curiosity coursing through him, Alex clicked the link. What he discovered was something he could never have predicted. It was nothing like the sticks he had checked out prior to this discussion group. Here, the users traded personal messages from real people, the intimate, threatening details of people who did not know they were in someone else's sights. In videos circulating on social media, Alex watched in horror as others were attacked in the street, or even through the windows of their homes. The line between right and wrong in the cyberspace and physical world started dissolving. Then it happened. Alex received a message. Subject line: "We know your location." Also, within that message was an image of his childhood house. Alex's heart sank. He had never posted anything personal about himself on the site. So how would they know this? He wasn't the intended recipient of the message, but it still sent a shiver of terror through him. It made his skin crawl to think that someone, somewhere, was watching him. Alex tried to brush it off, but the paranoia bubbled again. He immersed himself in search of this dark corner of the internet, and as he did, his very being became enveloped by it. No longer able to distinguish reality from illusion, he was bombarded with fake news, lies, and conspiracies from every corner. He was bombarded with seemingly everywhere messages, pseudonymous, in code, to shake him up. The lines between reality and fiction began to blur, and he started to feel like he was being manipulated, gaslighted by these nameless faces who understood how to push his buttons. Shadow Walker set in motion a perverse game, a dare for the boldest residents of the community. Participants were coaxed into completing a series of progressively severe dares. Initially, the dares appeared as innocuous, foolish feats designed to titillate. However, Alex quickly discovered a terrifying possibility. Some of the contestants were taking these dares too far. These acts produced the results mentioned here: violence, destruction, and some individuals driven to the brink. Then came the invitation. A post marked the final stage. Read more. This was the realm that only the most hardcore 4chan users were allowed to enter. The message was a harbinger of a new mode of engagement, one that entailed live streaming involvement in repugnant, illegal behavior. With 4chan, there was almost no accountability, since its key feature was anonymity. Alex had second thoughts, but his interest had been awoken uncontrollably. He entered the private chat. Staring is impossible, and I was horrified by what he saw. The video going around in the chat was a live video of violence taking place in progress. The cheering comments spurring on the attackers, the anonymity of the users adding fuel to the horror. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to stop, but Alex couldn't tear his gaze away from it. But by then, it was too late. Then it struck him. This was not only due to trolls. This was the real world. These people behind these acts were criminals, and the internet was their protective barrier. After that, the messages came thick and fast. "You're next," one read. Alex froze. panic welling up at those ominous words. He attempted to erase his accounts, close his browser, and run away. Yet the fear lingered in him. Weird stuff started to go down for him IRL. He would get phone calls from unfamiliar numbers. His inbox quickly filled with emails containing personal information he had never revealed, like someone knew his every move. And then Shadow Walker came back. The user was aware of everything in Alex's life, things he had never shared with anyone. They were short to the point of being cryptic, but bolder, more menacing, and maddeningly vague. The whole of his history, every personal minute, felt as if it was leaking away to the shadow domains of the save world. The boundary separating the online sphere from reality was all but null and void. Alex knew that there was no way out at this point. He was being hunted. Anonymous users on 4chan, who he had never met, were employing everything in their power to chase him down. Their weapons were social engineering, hacking, and manipulation. He had lost control of his privacy, his identity, and even his security. He was overwhelmed with paranoia, the feeling of always having someone watch over him, never being alone. Then there was the discovery Alex made about Shadow Walker. No single entity, rather a group. This was a group of people who banded together to intimidate, to destroy lives, to drive people to their ends. The community was a perverse hive mind, and Alex fronted as a synecdoche of their game, a reflection of all the other people whom they preyed on. And so, Alex was faced with an impossible decision: surrender to the game and live with the harrowing wake of 4chan's web, or lash out and potentially lose everything along the way. It was no longer a matter of survival, it was literally a matter of his soul. The story closes with Alex looking back on the events that have unfolded. The damage is irreversible. He may have fled, but he is not the man he was. What was once the place he used to connect and be entertained is now a self-imposed prison of his making. Now, he knows the real price of anonymity and the threats that lurk within the darkest depths of the internet. It began like any other night. At 25, Ethan was a techie who was fed up with scrolling through the same platitudes on social media and wanted to explore what else the internet had to offer. He had heard rumors about 4chan, the anonymous bastion, and decided to take a look. His curiosity surely piqued. He had no idea he was about to be transferred from online chaos to confusion that doesn't just exist until you log off. At the beginning, everything was what he expected it to be. 4chan was a chaotic soup of memes, musings, and random threads. He liked the lack of moderation on the site. No rules, no moderators, just this vast post-apocalyptic digital wasteland where anyone could just say whatever they wanted. It was heady, this absence of identity, and Ethan, like so many, felt free. He could write whatever popped into his head without being judged, without being held to account. Yet, the longer he was on the site, the more something changed. Before long, the randomness of it gave way to a more sinister side of 4chan, something he never expected. Ethan started seeing strings that were not only were strange, they were alarming. There were posts that had overt violence, posts that posted gory and grisly images, and posts that appeared to promote such behavior. He felt uncomfortable, but at the same time he also could not look away. It was just so disturbing, yet there was an aura of curiosity about it, a tingle of refreshing allure that somehow drowned out his discomfort. Before long, Ethan came across a thread that piqued his interest. Actually, The Dark Game was an incredibly simple title. He clicked it, expecting more opportunistic, harebrained shock jock nonsense. Instead, what he discovered was much worse. The post was for a sick, silent contest, an underground game of who could assemble more randoms and harass them, silently ruin another human being's life, any human being, anonymously, and the rules of the game were simple but horrifying. The posts were littered with tales of users stalking, harassing, and manipulating civilians who had lost their jobs, their families, or worse. A user known as Shadow Walker was something of a legend on the board. His posts were so cryptic, like there was always more to the story. He had more to offer. He had the knowledge of the dark web at his disposal. He would post odd links, coded messages, and riddles that appeared to lead to an underbelly of a forum way past the reach of your run of the mill Forshon user, with equal parts fear and intrigue motivating him. Ethan followed the tracks. The first time Ethan clicked on a link that he saw posted by a user called Shadow Walker, he didn't have a clue what would happen next. That URL would take him to a private forum, already much worse than anything he had ever witnessed on 4chan. People did not just exchange tales or photographs, they exchanged private info right here, real information. I have names, I have addresses, I have phone numbers, I have pictures. And it wasn't simply about public shaming anymore. It was about entering into people's lives. He had written about being surveilled, stalked, even physically accosted. They bragged publicly about how they had tracked down the home of someone, or how they had invaded the intimate sphere of a person, all in the name of anonymity. Ethan's heart began to race. This wasn't just a game. These people were dangerous, and they were not out there to have fun. They were destroying lives, and they took pride in doing so. But then, a particular post by Shadow Walker caught his eye. Something about it stood out from the rest. Just a line. We know your location, plus a picture. It was a street corner, I think. But somehow, I recognized it. Ethan froze. He recognized that corner. It was only a block from his apartment. His gut churned. As far as he knew, he'd never published his address online. He always edited out the personal information, but somehow, someone had discovered him. And they were watching. Immediately, Ethan wanted to sign off. He snapped the computer shut, hoping that if he just closed it, the danger would vanish. But the unease lingered, his pulse quick, his hands cold, clammy. The rest of the evening, he walked up and down in his apartment, the ideas racing. Was it just a coincidence? Had Shadow Walker just chosen somewhere at random? Numbered. That had been a very straightforward message, too specific. The sensation of having eyes on me never went away for a few days, though. Whenever Ethan stepped out, he examined the area around, half expecting a tale. He became consumed by constantly checking his social media and trying to delete posts while making his profile crispy clean. Yet the harder he fought to protect himself, the more it felt like someone was one step ahead of him. The messages were starting to come to his phone. Weird texts or calls from random numbers were not an everyday thing. They were jibes. Nice apartment, one read. We can see you. Another wrote, we are waiting. When Ethan reported this to the police, they said there was nothing they could do. Threats were anonymous, and the messages were encrypted. Users behind them were untraceable by anyone. Days go by, and paranoia started to wear on Ethan. He felt as if someone was hiding, waiting behind every rustle in the bushes outside his window. Every passing car he did not recognize was a pair of eyes watching him. And then it happened. Ethan sat at his desk one night, attempting to concentrate on work when his phone rang. It was another message. This one only had a photo with it. The photo was of his own front door, and his heart skipped a beat as he recognized it. But it certainly was not done from a van. The image was crisp, not only because the person had been standing right there, mere feet from him. We're inside. A surge of panic raced through Ethan. He shot up in his chair and ran to the door to see if it was locked. He hurried to the windows and looked out the open blinds, but there was no one there. All felt normal, too normal. It felt like time had stopped for everything in the world. He immediately attempted to redial the local police, but the line went dead. A cold sweat broke across his face as he finally understood that whatever was going on, this was no longer a simple online game. They were now all of these faceless users, and they had invaded his real life. Everything about him they had known, the way he spent his days, the things he did, the things he never did, including this. Ethan, trying to break away, only made it worse. It was as though they'd already wormed their way into every aspect of his life. He had deleted his 4chan account, his email, and every trace of his activity before he had shown up. Tried to publish a movie, and what? Destroyed his life? Wherever he went, whatever he was doing, the messages kept coming. The jeering, the threats, the constant reminder that the digital prison he had stepped into was inescapable. One night, just as Ethan was ready to fall asleep from exhaustion, a final message came through. The note simply said, "It's too late to run now." And that was when the screen started flickering, like something or someone just gained complete access to his device. The walls were closing in, all that now had a sense of weight to it, the creeping feeling that this game was real and that there would be no end to it. He would get caught, even if he attempted to leave. They always would. Ethan had no idea if he would ever get away. Lines between the digital world and the real world had blurred beyond recognition, but this time, nowhere to run.